Nobody tells you how lonely it is. You did everything right. You worked harder than anyone around you. You got the education, the job, the income. And now you feel more alone than you ever did when you had nothing. Getting out of financial difficulty is supposed to be a happy ending. Nobody warns you about what comes after. Hi, I'm Hana. This is Mind Bloom. Today we're talking about the psychological and social cost of upward mobility, the things that happen to people who successfully climb out of poverty that almost never get discussed. Because financial progress is real and worth celebrating. And it is also, genuinely, one of the most disorienting experiences a person can have. The first thing nobody tells you, you will likely lose relationships. Not dramatically, not in arguments or confrontations. Quietly, gradually, almost imperceptibly. Your interests shift, your schedule changes. The things you're worrying about are different now. The conversations that used to feel natural start to feel like you're translating. And the people who knew you before, who loved you before, may begin to feel like they're looking at someone they recognize but don't quite know anymore. Researchers who study class mobility call this the bicultural experience. The person who moves between economic worlds doesn't fully belong to either one. In the world they came from, they changed too much. In the world they're moving toward, they carry an origin that marks them as different. This is not rejection. It is a specific kind of loneliness that has no clean name and that almost no one who hasn't experienced it can fully understand. The second thing nobody tells you, you will feel like a fraud constantly. You'll sit in rooms that your younger self could never have imagined entering and spend the entire time waiting to be discovered. Discovered as someone who doesn't belong, as someone who got here by accident, as someone who, if people really knew where they came from and how they got here, would be quietly asked to leave. Psychologists call this impostor syndrome, and while it affects people across all backgrounds, research consistently shows it runs particularly deep in people who have crossed significant class lines. Because the culture of professional and financial success has codes, unspoken ones. Ways of speaking, ways of dressing, ways of navigating rooms and relationships that children absorb when they grow up surrounded by them. The person who arrives without those codes learns to perform them. But the performance always feels like a performance. And underneath the performance, there's a quiet, persistent voice that says, you don't actually belong here. The third thing nobody tells you, your family may become one of the most complicated parts of your life. Not because they love you less, because the distance between your lives has grown in ways that are hard to talk about and harder to close. You may find yourself at holiday dinners feeling like a visitor in your own family. You may find that the financial decisions that make sense for your life, investing, building savings, not lending money you can't afford, create friction with people who see those decisions as abandonment. You may find that your success, rather than being celebrated, is experienced as a kind of reproach, a reminder of what others didn't manage to build. And you may find yourself giving money not because you have enough, but because the guilt of having more is simply harder to bear than the financial strain of giving. This dynamic has a name in sociology, the first-generation penalty. The cost paid by the person who moves first, who absorbs the social and emotional friction of the transition so that those who come after might move more easily. The fourth thing nobody tells you: you will have to grieve. Not a person, a self. The version of you that existed before, the person shaped by the place you came from, the circumstances you grew up in, the specific texture of a life lived with less, that person is real, and they don't entirely survive the transition. This is not a loss that anyone around you is likely to recognize or name. In the world you came from, you've succeeded. In the world you're moving toward, you've arrived. On paper, there is nothing to grieve. But inside, there is a morning that happens when you realize that the person you used to be, the one who knew everyone in that neighborhood, who could name every face in that church, who understood the specific language of that particular kind of difficult, is slowly becoming someone you can only visit. Psychologists who study identity transitions describe this as disenfranchised grief, a real loss that receives no social acknowledgement because it doesn't fit the story of success. So what do you do with all of this? First, name it: the loneliness, the fraud feeling, the family complexity, the grief. These are not signs that something went wrong. They are the normal, documented psychological accompaniments to significant upward mobility. You are not ungrateful. You are not weak. You are not broken for finding this hard. You are someone who moved across a significant divide, and the disorientation you feel is the accurate emotional response to that movement. Second, find your people, not people who are just like you now. People who have made a similar journey, who know what it's like to sit at both tables and feel slightly foreign at each. These people exist, and the relief of being understood, fully understood, without explanation, by someone who has lived a version of what you've lived is one of the most powerful things available to someone navigating this transition. Third, give yourself permission to hold both identities. Where you came from is not something to escape or hide. It is the source of a specific kind of resilience, empathy, and understanding that the world you're entering genuinely needs. The goal is not to become someone who forgot. It's to become someone who carries both and is made richer, not poorer, by the complexity of having lived in more than one world. If any part of this video named something you've been carrying without words, I want you to know something. The difficulty of getting out is real. The loneliness is real. The grief is real. And none of it means you made the wrong choice. It means you did something genuinely hard. Something that most people who haven't done it don't fully understand. And you're still here. Share this with someone who's in the middle of this journey and doesn't have words for what they're feeling. Or with someone who loves a person going through it and doesn't understand why success looks so complicated. I'm Hana. Take care of yourself. See you in the next one.